This happened and it changed everything. On a frigid Friday evening, as most of the world prepared for the weekend, as families gathered and cities quieted, the United States military unleashed hell across the Syrian desert. The Pentagon has launched an investigation, but its findings will likely remain classified, buried in the black world of operational security and intelligence protection. The enemy may hide, they may disperse, they may go to ground, but they cannot escape the reach of American intelligence and American firepower. Crucially, the United States did not act alone in Operation Hawkeye Strike. The presence of American troops in Syria is itself a subject worthy of deep examination, a mission that operates in the shadows of public consciousness, rarely debated in Congress, seldom discussed in mainstream media. The United States has repeatedly urged restraint, has attempted to mediate, has tried to create buffer zones and security arrangements. But American leverage over Turkey is limited. Ankara is not a client state. It is not simply a counterterrorism operation. It is a message broadcast to multiple audiences simultaneously. To the Islamic State, it communicates lethality and resolve. Attack American forces, and overwhelming retaliation will follow. They depend on local partners for intelligence, for force protection, for logistical support, and for the ground presence necessary to maintain pressure on the Islamic State. And they were carefully choreographed performances designed to terrorize local populations into submission, to attract recruits who craved membership in a movement that seemed powerful and unstoppable, and to provoke Western military intervention. Leadership had been decentralized, command structures adapted, and the ideology remained intact. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi survived the fall of the caliphate by nearly 7 months. He went into hiding in northwestern Syria, in Idlib province, an area controlled by rival jihadist groups. Over 80% of the population now lives below the poverty line, surviving on less than $2 a day. More than 13 million Syrians have been displaced either internally or as refugees in neighboring countries. This represents over half of the pre-war population. The meeting produced no formal agreements, no signed treaties, but it established a channel of communication and signaled American willingness to engage with Syria's new government. At least, provisionally. The al-Shara government has protested these strikes as violations of sovereignty, but it lacks the military capability to prevent them and has shown no inclination to directly confront Israel. Turkey's position is perhaps the most complex. The United Nations established the international, impartial, and independent mechanism to collect and preserve evidence of serious crimes in Syria. But this body has no prosecutorial power and depends on national courts to actually bring cases. Over half of Syria's hospitals and healthcare facilities have been damaged or destroyed. Medical professionals have fled the country in massive numbers, creating critical shortages of doctors, nurses, and specialists. The education system has similarly collapsed. On one side are those who argue for continued engagement, emphasizing that the relatively small American footprint in Syria serves multiple strategic purposes. The claim by the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights that the Palmyra attacker may have been a member of Syrian security forces suggests an intelligence gap. This has profound implications for counterinsurgency operations, for force protection, for border security, and for homeland defense. The incident that sparked Operation Hawkeye Strike occurred in Palmyra, a city whose very name evokes the layered history of conflict in the Middle East. Yet they choose to work with American forces for various reasons. Economic necessity in war-ravaged economies where employment is scarce, belief in the mission and opposition to extremism. Critics argue that the relentless pursuit model treats symptoms rather than causes, that it creates a perpetual state of war, and that it fails to address the political, economic, and social conditions that enable extremism to flourish. The remoteness of Deir ez-Zor makes it difficult to govern and easy to hide in. The province is characterized by desert terrain, dispersed settlements, and limited infrastructure. President Trump's framing of Operation Hawkeye Strike on Truth Social, stating that the United States is inflicting very serious retaliation, reflects his communication style and his approach to foreign policy. The attack triggered days of fighting that killed hundreds and allowed dozens of fighters to escape. The detention crisis illustrates a broader problem with the international approach to dealing with the aftermath of the Islamic State's territorial defeat. The surveillance programs revealed by Edward Snowden, the use of enhanced interrogation techniques, the detention of suspects without trial at Guantanamo Bay, the targeting of American citizens in drone strikes, all of these have raised profound questions about the limits of executive power. The wounded soldiers from the Palmyra ambush face long roads to recovery, both physical and psychological. And the ability to strike does not answer the question of whether striking advances long-term objectives. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's characterization of Operation Hawkeye Strike as a declaration of vengeance is honest in its emotional directness. The 2 American soldiers killed in Palmyra, their names, their stories, their dreams deserve to be remembered as individuals rather than statistics. They were sons, perhaps brothers, perhaps fathers, or husbands. This is Jesse Waters, reporting on Operation Hawkeye Strike and the unfinished war against the Islamic State. The fighters' jets have returned to base. The explosions have faded. The smoke is clear.